Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome to day number 3 of the Women's Discipline and Mindset Summit. If you all have been joining me all week, you know we've been getting some treats throughout this week, and today is no different. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Lashawn Gee, your favorite discipline and mindset coach. I help female athletes to show up authentically through mindset, productivity, and wellness strategies so that they can be confident and successful in their transition to life after sports. Just as a disclaimer, please make sure when you come in that your camera is off, that your sound is on mute so that we can carry on a wonderful conversation with our speaker tonight. We have with us the first male in our second year of the Women's Discipline and Mindset Summit. We have our first male female supporter, joining us for celebration of International Women's Month. We have Taj Deshawn. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio so you can know a little bit about him, and then I'm going to pass the baton to him so that he can share a little bit more. So, Taj is an author, speaker, and athlete transition coach. I love that title. When his football career ended, Taj struggled heavily with depression because he was so focused on the game, he never fully developed a clear vision for his life. After several years of stumbling around in the emotional darkness of uncertainty, Taj began to take his eyes off of himself and focused on serving others. He now runs holistic programs for retired athletes who, like he once was, are struggling to adapt to life after the game. Not only does Taj help former players land jobs and start businesses, he helps them find fulfillment in every area of their lives. It's become his personal mission and passion to reach out and help others overcome the fear, frustration, and uncertainty associated with life post-athletics. Taj, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so happy to have you here. When I read your bio, when you sent me your bio, when I read it, it was like, my God, this is like the male athlete version of me post athletics, literally. And I know, it's definitely a 50-50 thing. You either are in that space where you're in that uncertain space in life after sports, and in other ways you have a clear path, you know what you want to do, and you make it happen. But to know that our lives are very parallel. I didn't play football, of course, I ran track, but to know that parallel of that uncertainty was there, and what do you do next? It's like, oh my gosh, I have to have him join us, because I know that spans over male athletes as well as female athletes. So they all can get a touch of your greatness. So like I said, I'm going to pass the baton over. Tell us a little bit about who Taj is, what Taj does, and why it matters.
Yeah, well, first of all, Lashawn, thank you for that wonderful intro, and thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of everything that you do, especially the work you do with athletes. That's near and dear to my heart. Honored to be the first man as a part of this summit. And yeah, I'll try to keep it brief because I know we got a lot to cover today. But what I do, as you mentioned, I'm an athlete transition coach. I work with former athletes, mostly collegiate, some professional, and some Olympic athletes as well, helping them map out a powerful new path for themselves after the game. And I've been doing that work since 2018. And I love it. It's become my life's mission. And my whole philosophy is I never want to, you see the sign behind me, Thrive After Sports. That's the name of the podcast, the name of my program, the name of my first book. I don't want to help athletes just survive and just get a job and just find a paycheck or, just float along. I want to help them thrive in everything they do after they're done playing their sport. So that's what I do, why it matters. I mean, hey, we could spend the whole hour talking about that. It matters because
Right.
So many of us, like you said, you ran track, I played football. It matters because we dedicate so many years to our sport and achieving excellence in our sport. And then when we're done, a lot of us are underprepared and we have to start over. I always say you're like a freshman in life. So you go from the top of your field to being at the bottom of the totem pole in your field and not even knowing what field you want to get into. And that can be scary. And that comes with a lot of different challenges. So Did I answer your questions? I know I went on a little tangent there.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You absolutely did. I think that I like that title, like freshman in life, because people think that, when you're 22 and you're graduating, that you just are ready. You're ready for the world and you're ready to just do this thing called life. When, at 22, you realize, wow, I have so many, God willing, years ahead of me than I do behind me. But you think you have it all together at that point. And there's so much unknown that is out there. And especially as an athlete, like you said, we devote our lives. I know for me that rings very true from from eighth grade through college and even post collegiate. I devoted my life to my sport and wanting to be the best and wanting to be the best I could be. And when you're so focused in that and so driven in that, yes, you gain a lot of amazing qualities as an athlete when you get into the working world. But what people fail to realize is, yeah, you have that, but there's this identity that you also are carrying that some people have to question. Is this really me? Is this really what I want to do? Am I only an athlete? Am I only good for being an athlete? And that's a very important place for people to stop and let that marinate and really answer that question truthfully for themselves. So knowing that you help people through that transition, giving them tools that are necessary to thrive, super, super important. And so thank you for that. I mean, I know I'm appreciative.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for and we're off to a fast start, Lashawn, because I already got a half a page full of notes already just off based off of what you said. What you said about how we feel like we're supposed to be ready, or like the world looks at us like we're supposed to be ready. That was one of the hardest parts. And I know you probably experienced that too. It's like, okay, I'm 22, I'm going on 23 at the time coming out of college. I should have this figured out by now. And you start putting all this pressure on yourself to be like, man, why don't I have a job? Why don't I know what I want to do? I'm seeing all my peers around me, maybe the people who didn't play college sports or professional sports, and now they're starting out in their careers, they're buying houses. And I'm just like, I don't even know how to put a resume together. So that's huge. And then what you said about the transferable skills, like, yes, we can. I believe, and you know this, when you have an athletic mindset, you can take those skills and go be the top of any field. But so many of us scramble and just end up doing something just to do it, like just to get people off our back. Like, at least like I say, I got a job now, I'm an adult, and then you rise in the ranks because you're a competitor. But when it's all said and done, if you're competing at the wrong thing, you're not going to be successful in that long term, or you're on the clock. It's only a matter of time before you burn out. I always tell people, like, you ran track. If somebody tried to make you be a professional bowler, you wouldn't enjoy that. Could you be great at it? Sure, because you're an athlete, but it's not what you really want to do. So why do we do that in our careers after we're done playing our sport?
Right. Oh gosh, that is definitely a question that everyone should ask themselves post college, whether you're an athlete or not. Like, are you really ready? Like, is what you're about to do really what what you were striving to do those 4 or 5 years that you were in school? I mean, I know plenty of people who this was their major, but they do something 180 degrees different, right? Or
Yeah.
and now you think you are relegated to this one subject matter, this one study area, and this one area of study, and then you get out here and it's like, well, wait, does this give me the money that I need to sustain myself? Does this give me the fulfillment that I need? Is this what I want to do for the next, at least when our parents were younger, the next 20, 30 years? I mean, I know that's not as popular and notable now, working that type of longevity through jobs. But I mean, that simply asking yourself, is this really what I want to do once I am done in this bubble of collegiate life? And this segues into the next question I wanted to ask: the importance. What do you think the importance is of a healthy transition for athletes? Because a lot of us transition, right? We do graduate. Some may not graduate and they just stop. But what is the importance of really having that healthy transition for athletes into life after sports? What are some tips and guidance that you can give to us for that?
Yeah, the first thing I'll start with is, and this is something you brought up earlier, which I really liked. You talk about like some people know exactly what they want to do, um, and they end up having great careers, which is great. Like more power. I wish I was one of those people, you know. And some people they think they know what they want to do, but being in the classroom is different from like going into a certain field and actually starting to work in an industry. And that's where you see a lot of people, they get into these jobs or they go into certain fields and they're like, this ain't for me. I wish I would have known this before I majored in this. And then you have the majority, I'd say at least over 50% of athletes who come out and they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I thought I wanted to do this. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to get a job. And so some things I suggest is, and it's very difficult to do. You and I both know this because we played at a high level. One of the things you have to do during your career and after your career, no matter when you start, of course, you want to start sooner rather than later, but you have to find clarity around the type of lifestyle you want. Not just, I would say, don't think about what you want to do, but think about how you want to live. Right. And that, of course, that applies to more than just athletes. We're talking to everybody here. Like at the end of the day, people get so caught up on, oh, I want to do this because, you know, this will look good on a business card, or, you know, this pays a certain amount of money, or even I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do this because I saw so and so build an app and they became a billionaire. Versus, okay, what do I actually want my day-to-day life to look like? And I don't think a lot of people spend time considering that question. Like for me, early on, I knew, no offense to anybody who does this, but I know that, and this was way before the pandemic, I knew that me driving in traffic every day, wearing a suit and tie and sitting in the cubicle, I knew I had about this much time to figure out a way to get out of that or I was going to go crazy. And so when I would come home from work, I would think about ways that I could basically customize a lifestyle for myself. And that's something I recommend to people is just figure out what's important to you. Always start with who. That's another thing. You start with who you want to serve, um, what you want to do to serve that group of people, and then how you're going to do it. And the how is important because you have to make sure that it's tailored to you, right? I could go work in an athletic department right now. I get job offers all the time, but I enjoy being, you know, being able to work with athletes all around the world from the comfort of my own home. And I'm not tied to one specific team or university. I can work with anyone, anywhere, at any time, just like you do. So, yeah, that's what I would say. That's just some general advice.
I like it. I like it. Who do you want to be? Who do you get to be? What do you want your life, your daily life to look like? Yes, I'm raising my hand to the point of I knew that I wasn't meant to be in just one set of four walls for an extended amount of time. I've said that for years and years and years. Could I do it? Absolutely. Have I done it? Absolutely. And I knew every single time I was in that space that, there's just more. There's just more. There's another body of people that I am supposed to be impacting and helping. And I'm not going to do it just at this one place forever and ever. So I love that you said that, because we don't often get the opportunity again to just sit and allow ourselves to dream and make a plan to have those dreams come to life.
And on that note, real quick, what you said earlier was so key. I forgot to bring this up because I wrote it down. You said like 20, 30 years of what you're going to be doing. Of course, we don't live in the world like our parents did. Like you said, there's going to be multiple things we do as during our careers or as entrepreneurs, whatever it is you do. But that's something I try to get across too, where it doesn't have to be this, oh man, I can't compete anymore. Of course, we're always going to miss the sport that we play, but it was such a small window in our lives. Like you said, we have our entire lives ahead of us. Like I'm 30, I plan on living to 100. So that's exciting when I think about the fact that I can wake up and I have like 70 more years to play and create and build things and become who I want to become. Once you get past the fact that that was a small window of your life when you were competing at a high level, now you can start competing in the game of life, and you have two, three times the amount of time you've even been alive to do that. And then it becomes exciting.
Right, right. You get to actually dream and then create a plan for that dream to happen, because you have so much time to be able to make that happen. Again, if we are blessed to be able to live on this side of the grass, right, for as long as, as long as we're supposed to, we have so much time to make things happen that really truly matter to us versus being in a place that we're not happy, being in a situation that really, deteriorates our health, mentally, physically. And I find that athletes already have, we've taken a lot onto our bodies. So the last thing that we want when we're out here looking to do the thing that we love is to then be broken down mentally. We've already been broken down physically. We've gotten hit, we've fallen, we've had surgeries, we have these ongoing nagging injuries that we just deal with. We've gotten to the point where we just deal with it because that's how it's always been. But really finding the thing that we love adds years to our lives. Do you find that the athletes that you tend to work with who come to you, do you find that they get stuck in that I should still be doing this thing that I've been doing for this amount of time? I've been doing this sport for so long. I know I got another year or 3 in me. I know I can keep going. And how do you shift their mindsets to realize like, hey, yes, that is something that you did, but that doesn't necessarily have to be your identity, and there is more.
That's such a great question. Yeah, normally the athletes who come to me, they find out about the book or the podcast, or they get referred to me. They're already at a place where they're ready to move on. But I have had the occasional athlete, just like you said, who's like, man, I think I can still play if I could try to, make it to this camp next year. And I'm not in the business of crushing anybody's dreams. So if someone, what I do is first and foremost, if I come across someone like that who still feels like they want to compete, then what I have them do is basically weigh up the options. What are the pros and cons of each? If you continue training, um, and you try to make it to a camp or make it to a team, depending on what that time period is before that window closes, then by all means go for it. But sometimes what I discovered through that process, as you might imagine, is that they're just kind of clinging to it because it's comfortable and it's familiar, and they're scared of the uncertainty that's on the other side. So that's a tough line to tread, because I want to be very careful about, like I said, not crushing anyone's dreams, but also at the same time being realistic and allowing them to assess where they're really at. So I've had people who like go on to continue to try to pursue, and they may come back later if they don't make it, or people even have a short professional career and then end up working with me years later. But a lot of times people are just like, okay, I need to be realistic. I'm just scared to try to find something new. And so the first thing I do, to your point, I never want to come to someone and be like, hey, so now you're done. What do you want to do now? What kind of job you want? Like, it's like, it's too soon for that. There's so much,
Right.
I think you used the word healing earlier. There's so much healing that needs to take place before we even get to that stage. So I'm very intentional about peeling back those layers and kind of helping people get past the things they may be dealing with internally in terms of their identity or self-doubt, or just the feeling of being a failure, all these different things that come up, and addressing those things up front, so that once we get to the stage, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month in sometimes, where we can start crafting the vision for the future, now they're actually in a place where they're excited to move forward, and they don't have anything that can trip them up. Because I never want to help someone get on their path and be excited about where they're going, but they're tripped up by things that are going on internally, so they can't be as successful as they really could possibly be if we didn't address those things up front.
Right. I love it. I love that. I love that you don't come at them in that way, because it's a very, while it is a very blunt way, and I mean, it's a very direct question. Like, what do you want to do next? Easing an athlete who has done the sport, some people having done their sport from age 3, 4, you know, I started when I was 13 in my sport. But even at that age, the amount of time that I competed in that sport, 13 to 33, really, I I mean, it was what I clung to. And I wasn't ready to answer that question. What do I want to do next? It's like, well, wait. I think I behaved in that way. So I was doing all the things that were like, well, I should be doing this next. I should go do this next. But I didn't take the time to say, okay, well, how am I mentally? You know, what am I passionate about, in this season of my life? Am I truly ready to move on? Because I had a period of time where it was like I can do a little more, and I did do a little more. And then I tore my Achilles, and then I said, you know what? I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And it might not be so extreme, right, for everyone, to tear a ligament, have some career ending injury. But for me, what mattered to me is, again, I have all these years in front of me. If I continue to break my body down in this way through this type of training, what kind of quality of life am I going to have when I truly am done? When I'm like, I'm not getting on another track, I'm not getting in another set of blocks, I'm not jumping into anybody else's pit, I'm not going over anybody else's hurdle. What kind of quality of life do I want to have? When I start a family, what does that look like? When I get older, and we're talking true health, physically, mentally, what does that look like? And asking that direct question can be harsh and really off-putting, I think, for an athlete.
Yeah, you know what's crazy about that is that a lot of times, I don't know if you probably, I know you experience this. Matter of fact, that question comes from those who are closest to us. So I remember I played my final season of college ball, and I came home, and some of the most like awkward and uncomfortable moments was be like holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, being around the family. So Taj, what are you up to now? And in reality, I want to be like, really nothing at all. I have nothing going on, and I'm embarrassed about it. But you just try to like come up with whatever. I'll be like, oh, I'm interviewing for a few jobs or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy because, like you said, it's the last thing you want is for people to, instead of a lot of, and I'm not saying anything bad about anyone. A lot of people just don't understand this, which is why I'm glad we're having conversations like this to open up conversations about what it's like to retire from your sport, especially something like with an injury, like you said, like that's tough. You know what I mean? You didn't get to compete up until like basically your eligibility was up. But that's one of the toughest things to just to bring it full circle is like you got people in your face, like, what are you doing? What are you gonna do? What are you thinking? And putting all this pressure on you instead of trying to help you or asking you how you're doing. It just makes it more challenging than it really needs to be. So for anybody listening, if you have athletes in your life, just keep this conversation in mind that we're having right now and try to give them some support rather than putting pressure on them to figure out what's next.
Right, right. I mean, they, especially in 2022, and the last, I mean, we're talking probably 15 or 20 years, honestly, the amount of pressure already put on young people from media, from social media, from family and friends, from coaches to be the best. I announce at track meets now, and I mean, the amount of coverage that some of these kids are receiving, it's like, that's pressure. That's pressure. It affects your mental health. It affects, everything that they are doing. They can't go to school without somebody in their face. I mean, I did lots and lots of articles, newspaper articles, and interviews when I was in high school. And even that amount of coverage at that time, you're talking mid 90s, mid late 90s, that amount of coverage, it was like every time I turned around, somebody speaking to me, and I'm like, I don't know you. Like, how do you know me? And then I have to remember, oh yeah, did that article. That's where they remember me from. But these kids now, I mean, you get an Instagram reel of a highlight of an eighth grader. We covered an eighth grader who's the fastest eighth grader in the country right now, in the 60-meter dash. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing this kid warm up and do his thing. And granted, he was an amazing athlete. He is amazing, but to know that he can't go to a meet and just sit in the stands. He has to seclude himself because everybody's going to want to come around and talk to him and get his autograph and take a picture. And it's just so much. It's so much. And this is I think contributes to why athletes struggle once they're done, well, while they're in, but definitely once they're done with their college career, or their professional career if they go so far. Why do you think? I think it's really because of that type of pressure of coverage and media and that type of influence. But why do you think that some of the athletes out here are struggling once they are done with their sport to transition into what's next?
Yeah, you brought up such a great point. And quick side note, when you talk about the 90s, I'm like, the 90s? I thought we were around the same age. Like, black don't crack for real, Lashawn. I was like, wait a minute, I'm here calculating in my head. Like, I thought we were around the same age. Like, my goodness. Man. Matter of fact, I think you might look younger than me, low key. If you put us side by side, people would be like, he's probably about 30 something, you know?
Well, thank you so much. We have a good decade between us.
Wow, yeah. Man. Shout out to you. I need to know what you're eating over there.
Thank you.
Okay, back to what you said about media though, especially everything nowadays going on with name, image, and likeness. Like, so for me, like Instagram didn't even come out till I was a senior in college. So there was no pressure. There was no type of social media pressure going on, like at all. So I can imagine what they go through these days, like the pressure that comes from that, the pressure that comes from NIL and brand deals and all that type of stuff. Like, what Candace said, for real, that's what I'm saying though.
Don't crack.
That's what I'm saying. We got a decade between us. It's not showing at all. But yeah, I think it's what we were talking about earlier, though. That pressure just comes from like, you're so great at this one thing. And now you compound that with like everybody's looking at you. There's always a camera in your face. There's always some posts. And, people are, you know, as well as I do, people are addicted to social media. So, you post a picture of you in your jersey or you had a good game. For me, it was just like I was in the newspaper. Like, big deal. You know exactly. What I mean? I still got the newspaper clippings to this day. But I think that contributes to it. And so it goes back to one of the things I said as soon as we got on here. When you go from that, being in the limelight and the spotlight, and you're like the man or the woman on campus, and everybody knows you and loves you for this one thing, including family members, not just the people around you, on your team or at your university or on your professional team, but like the people you grew up with. Like, that is where the challenge comes in, when you just like, you go from that to like, either I have no idea what I want to do or I'm starting out in this thing and I suck. And that's hard to go from being,
right.
Like I said, a freshman in life again. You're like, okay, I'm in this new field and I'm not very good at it. And I probably have like 2, 3, 4, or 5 years before I even start to show some promise in this area of my life. So it's tough.
Yes, it is. I look at, like I said, I look at the kids now and the amount of media that they are experiencing. And I can only wonder, because I have no idea. I can only wonder what it's like for them when they are done, because athletes now, not that I don't think they're training so much more intense than we are. Well, no, they may not. Yeah, they may be. I would argue to say that they are training more frequently, higher intensity, because it's that goal to be the best. It's the goal to outshine whoever it is in the atmosphere, in the interwebs, who is competing versus them. Somebody has, this person versus that person, and the toll it takes on their body. I mean, I know we competed, we trained hard. I mean, we got to the highest area of competition when it comes to just still being in an institution of learning, not even talking about post collegiate or professional sports, but we trained hard, and that is why we earned the space that we did on the teams that we were a part of. So yes, the intensity of training was high, but I feel like it's getting to be that type of intensity and frequency earlier and earlier, where you have young people influenced by not just their coaches, but their trainer, and by, things that we as collegiate athletes were afforded, right? Like, you have a training room that you go to, and you get all of your injuries taken care of. You have a sports medicine doctor that you go and see. They have all of these things set up. And it's like, when do you just get to play? When do you just get to have fun? Because at a point, it's just not fun anymore. And it's all business all the time. How do you separate being an athlete, being a student athlete, and having fun, and then realizing after it's all said and done, I just been working. I have just been
Mhm.
working all of my life.
Man, you know what? First of all, I think to your point, a lot of athletes are training more these days. And maybe it seems like it. I was having this conversation the other day. It's like, does it seem like it because it's in your face more with social media? And you even see like young kids training and going to camps and stuff? Or is it because the game is evolving in every sport? It's just like if I watch NFL films from when it was in black and white, I'm looking at it like, man, I would dust all these dudes. These dudes are terrible. But then the game evolves and athletes get better, and nutrition and performance and training enhances. So I think as the game evolves, the level of performance evolves, which makes it difficult. I couldn't see Candace's whole question, but I'm happy to. I'm on my phone right now, so
Yeah, I'll ask you once you're finished your thought. I'll pull up the question.
okay. Last thing I want to say, just what you brought up about being all business. That was something that was like a rude awakening for me in college. I don't know if you can relate to this or anybody listening might be able to relate. Where that was a challenge too, because you go from being a man in high school, a man or the woman in high school, and then you're around everyone who's the best, and then you get there and then you see the business side of it, and it's like, wow, I'm actually like you said, working overtime with the amount of hours I'm putting in, film, practice, games. I remember one day me and some of my teammates ran the numbers from like the amount of hours we put in versus the amount that our scholarships were worth. And it's like, we're getting paid less than minimum wage when you calculate the hours, which is crazy.
Wow.
And this was before NIL, right? So we couldn't get
Right.
paid off of anything else. But when you crunch the numbers, we work for less than minimum wage. I'm not complaining. We got our educations paid
Right.
for, but we earned every bit of that scholarship, as well as I do.
Absolutely. Do you believe that with the NIL in place now that it's a do you believe it is a how do I want to say this because I don't want anyone down my throat. Do you think it's a facade, right? It's a that desert oasis, right? That an athlete feels like, well, I can get this now and it's going to last. Well after I finish school, I'll have this nest egg, if you will, to take care of me when I'm done. Being able to be paid while you're a student athlete. That was not a thing. Never was a
Mm-hmm.
thing. Wasn't people considered it, thought about it, but it never was something that was actually conceived of when we were in school. So
Right.
athletes now having that opportunity, if you will, to be paid off their name and likeness. Do you think that that's some like a desert oasis for them where they just think this is how life is supposed to be, and that jades them once they transition out of that?
I think so. I think it's a very interesting thing to see unfold. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy athletes can get paid for their name, image, and likeness. I think it's long overdue.
Right.
At the same time, I think there are not enough systems in place to be able to actually support the athletes and make sure that things are actually flowing smoothly. Because it's hectic right now. It's like the wild wild west,
Yes.
and I know you've seen some of those things where, and then again, it's not beneficial for everybody, right? If you're the quarterback at LSU, Ohio State, of course there's going to come some great opportunities with that. And I think if you go, like, I played at Stony Brook University in Long Island. Most people even haven't heard of that. It's a D1 school, but it's a smaller D1 school, right? So with that, if NIL was around when I was in school, I would have to get creative because I'm not necessarily going to sign a deal with Nike at Stony
Right.
Brook. I mean, it's possible, but at the end of the day, I would have to do something like set up a partnership with like a local business or something, a local physical therapy business or even a pizza shop. So I think it's the wild, wild west. I think that but it all comes down to this. I feel like, once again, just like everything else, athletes need the right people in their corner, not just in athletic departments, but when you talk about different agencies that come in that do this type of work around branding and NIL, got to have good people in your corner, and not just people who can help you get money, but like you said, people who can help you keep the money, people who can teach you how to actually build something that's going to last over time, not just a quick check or a quick deal.
Right. Right. I agree. I definitely agree. Having people around you, the thought even popped up in my head, like, if they think that this is going to be how they're going to live and thrive after sports, you know,
Mhm.
they need to have people around them to bring them back to earth. You know, it's one of those, like, you get money from grandma and she's like, don't spend it all in one place, right? And you go and you spend it all in one place, and now you crying because your sister or your brother didn't spend all theirs in one place. I think somebody needs to be there to say, all right, I'm going to give you half of this now, or whatever percent. Now you do what you can, or I'm going to give you an allowance, so that, yes, you can utilize this to continue living the way that or creating the way you want to live once you're done with all of this, because I do think it's a great thing. I know everyone is not going to be afforded that same opportunity in the same way, but if you can use it and if you can get it and leverage it, it can be the beginning of a great way to look at what's next. Um, Candace actually asked a question for you. How did you start your business and how did you land your first client?
Oh, great question. Okay, I'll try to keep this brief because this is a long. Um, I'll tell you how I started it, and then if I forget to, because that was a journey in itself. But if I get to forget to tell you about how I got my first client, please just remind me.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out of college, didn't make it to the NFL, and was super depressed. Like came back home to California, was just lost, had no idea what I was doing. And after a period of just like feeling sorry for myself, basically, because I was back home in my childhood bedroom, broke, unemployed, no job prospects. After I snapped out of it and stopped like drinking and all this type of stuff to just mask the pain and what I was going through, I was like, man, you got to get it together. So I like took my athletic mindset and was like, how can I just start to build? I don't know what I want to do, but I got to get something. So started out in sales. Obviously, sales is a great foundation for anything you want to do in life. Quickly realized that although I was good at sales and I was making money, I wasn't fulfilled. I wanted to start helping people. That led me to making a pivot into recruiting because I can still be competitive with myself, put up placement numbers, earn commission, but I was helping people land jobs. And so while I was in that recruiting role, I was getting promotion after promotion because I enjoyed like helping people. And I was like, that was the point where I was starting to reach my limit of like, I can't do the corporate thing anymore. I need to figure out something else. And at the time, I was mentoring athletes on the side. I was already doing that type of work. Guys that graduated kind of with me, guys that grew up with, guys that graduated behind me at Stony Brook. And it started to grow and evolve where I was doing phone calls after work on the weekends. I was like an unofficial mentor. And then I realized it was bigger than just a football thing too, because they would refer me to like other athletes. My first non-football player that I mentored was a basketball player, a women's basketball player at TCU. And I'm like, oh, so this is bigger than me. This is bigger than football. This is like a lot of athletes go through that challenge. So
Mm-hmm.
then I started doing research, right? And this leads into how I started the business. I started doing research. This was like 2017, and it's gotten a lot better now. There are a lot more resources in terms of athlete mental health, athlete transition. But and even in 2017, like 5 years ago, there was virtually nothing around this type of work. So I'm on the NCAA website and stuff, and it's like, this is how you prepare for a job interview. And once again, that's great, but that doesn't really it doesn't address the underlying issues. And so I'm like, okay, I'm already mentoring athletes. I can take my skills from recruiting and my own personal experience to how I put myself in position to win. And I put together some curriculum. And what I did was I worked with a lot of athletes for free. And before I charged anyone, so my first client, check this out. Before I got my first paying client, I realized I didn't want athletes to have to pay to work with me. So I was like, I'm going to set up sponsorships and partnerships. That way I can work with athletes for free, but I can tap into grant money that's being raised around athlete mental health or even like recent transition studies. So I can get compensated. I can earn a living, but it's free for the athletes. Because I know I can, you know what coaching rate services are. And coming out of college, I know I couldn't have afforded it. So
Right.
I'm coming from a perspective of I want to be the person that I needed in my corner during that time. So I can't earn a living off of doing that because this group doesn't have that money. So I had to raise my own sponsorships and get compensated. So but how I was getting clients aside from referrals was just old school outreach. Like I leaned heavily on LinkedIn. So I'm the type of person, like, I have nothing to lose. So I'll be like, I'll type in former athletes and see who pops up. Okay, here's so and so. She just finished running track at Alabama, and now she's working at Enterprise Rent a Car. She's probably miserable. I know I would be. So I just send a couple messages, maybe send her my ebook or let her know what I do, let her know that it's free, right? That's the thing. People talk to you and they're like, oh, I don't have to pay for this. And from there, I started getting clients through that method as well. And then obviously the podcast. Thank you, Candace. I appreciate you.
That's so sweet. It really is.
Thank you. And then the podcast helps as well. So now, aside from referrals, I still do cold outreach to this day. Like, I reached out to 10 new athletes who could become clients this morning. So that never stops. The podcast obviously helped spread the word about what I was doing. And then I've written a couple books as well. So, all of that just kind of creates this ecosystem where people hear about what I'm up to. They reach out and I'm able to get them plugged in with some scholarship money, some resources to work with them. So that's how it started.
I love it. Speaking of books, speaking of podcasts, tell us about both. Candace says she loves your story. I certainly love it. I mean, you're giving me inspiration. I mean, I've put myself out there, in a number of ways to promote myself, because we are our own brand, and with the knowledge that we have, and tools we can offer, sometimes that's what it takes, is putting yourself out there. So definitely, definitely, I love your story and just your go-getter attitude. Like, I don't have anything to lose. I love that you said that. I don't have anything to lose. But yes, tell us more about Athlete to Entrepreneur, your one book that you have written, and then Thrive After Sports.
Yeah. So, man, well, let me start with the podcast, just because that kind of leads into the book. So through the podcast, when I first started Thrive After Sports, it was just me talking. Like, as you can tell, I'm a talker. So I was giving away like coaching advice and stuff that I was seeing in my program with athletes I was working with directly, with the idea that athletes can tap into this podcast and basically get help through the transition, and I never have to work with them. Like, there's only so many hours in a day. So that felt good to know that somebody listening to this right now who I'll never meet, never speak to, is getting help through their transition, right? And then it evolved into me interviewing like people like yourself, like, spoiler alert, I'm going to have Lashawn on the podcast coming up soon. Stay tuned. Thrive After Sports podcast, Lashawn's coming up. But I started having great people on, and through some mutual connections, this is how the book came about. I got plugged in. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Joy Walker. She goes by Six-Figure Athlete on maybe, I think it's Seven-Figure Athlete now on Instagram. But I got connected with her. Joy, you said Joy?
I think Joy? I've seen the name in passing.
Okay, she's dope. It's Joy, Joi, Joy Walker. Everybody check out what she's up to. She has like a trucking business now. She's killing it. But long story short, we did a podcast swap, and then I saw that she had a book, and I was like, there was something different about her book, because, and this is no disrespect to anyone, I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings if someone's listening to this right now, but some people, when they self-publish on like Amazon and do the book themselves, because it's a DIY project, it looks like a DIY project. And I've seen a lot of books come out on Amazon that's like, whoa, this is not very well put together inside and out, and that can hurt your brand. So Joy's book was phenomenally done. And I'm like, man, I got to figure out who did her book. So she plugged me in with this company, self-published in 30 days. I ended up getting my book done through that company. And now this is a whole other story, but I'm vice president of that company because I connected with the owner, and he's like a mentor to me. He's like a business mentor. So now I help other people tell their stories, mostly athletes, but I can help anybody, not just me personally, but I plug them in with the team and help them write, edit, register the copyrights, market the book, design the cover. But so that's been a fun adventure. But my book, I always tell people, it's like my coaching program in book format. It's not an autobiography. I don't have a big ego, so I didn't want to write a book and be like, oh, this is my life story, like anybody cares, right? The book is a tool. It's more so like I want athletes to be able to pick up that book, and by the time they finish the book, now they're able to have a vision for themselves, know how they want to do it, and execute. And most importantly, be healed, before anything else. So that's this book. It's in the background, but it's kind of might even be blocking it. But it's called Thrive After Sports. helping athletes dominate the game of life. So this is my first book. There's me on the back, you know what I'm saying, with the bald head shining. You feel me? And then, and then this is my second. This is a co-author book. This is volume one. This is called Athlete to Entrepreneur: Stories of Transition from Players to Professionals. So this is me and 20 other former athletes, some Olympians, some professionals, some collegiate. Audrey, I know you know we're connected through Audrey Codner Gibson. That's her right there.
Yes.
Boom. So
She's going to
Audrey
be
wrote
with
a
us on
chapter.
Friday.
I'm so excited for that. Yeah, I saw she was going to be on this part of your summit too. But we're working on volume two of this right now. So a lot of the same people, but we're gonna look for some new authors to contribute to that as well for volume two. But that's been another thing. Once again, like certain things just open up. And you know this, Lashawn. When you're on your path, I never thought I was gonna be VP of a publishing company and like helping other athletes and people write and tell their stories and or doing collaboration books. That was nowhere near on my radar. But just by staying open and being on my path and continuing to serve, things like that pop up. So that's been a lot of fun doing that role as well.
That, I mean, you are just the whole athlete thriving after sports package, and I am grateful. Again, when I started this summit, I wanted to highlight people who have come into my life in whatever way they have. Like, audience, mind you, I've never met Taj in real life, but we follow each other on social media and have for quite some time. And it just coming full circle to know and follow what he's up to, for me getting on and off and back on to my own path. When good people, great people come into your life and they're really doing and following their purpose, this is the fruit of that. When you follow your purpose, you definitely gain and gather the fruits of that. And this is a great example of someone who is has a story. I mean, like he said, he didn't do an autobiography, but you're hearing it right here. There is a whole entire story behind him being an athlete, a student athlete, not having his way, not knowing his way after graduation, and then really doing the work to find that and stay on that path and continuing to stay on that path. And so, me taking this opportunity to create a summit to celebrate those people, I have always said, I am a leader who create leaders. And Taj, you are definitely one of those people who, you're a leader, you're creating leaders, you're helping people find that identity in themselves after sports. And I mean, we're colleagues in that industry. And I am grateful for you because I mean, heck, I have a lot to learn. We all have continuous learning to do. But I definitely thank you for what you do and who you do it for. It's amazing.
Thank you, Lashawn. Thank you for having me. This has been phenomenal. I just appreciate, like you said, we just connected, haven't even met in person, and so many great things have come from it. And we've probably been connected for all of like 6 weeks, if that. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I'm excited for what the future holds, especially with the direction you're going and really leaning into with helping athletes as well. And there's just a lot of building to do, and I appreciate everything you do. And honored to be the first man on the panel. This is history right now.
Yes, indeed.
Um,
Yes, indeed.
yeah, I'm excited for when because this is your second summit, right?
Yes, this is the
Second,
second annual. My inaugural summit was last year, last week in March. So that is my stepping stone. Is every year to close out Women's History Month. I want to take time to celebrate definitely women who are doing their thing in their own industry and thriving. And I don't want to forget that I have good people in my life who are women, yes, but I also have people in my life who are males who definitely do what they can and all that they can to support women. That is that's a reason why I definitely had you. That's the biggest reason why I had you on here, is that yes, I love and appreciate what you do and respect what you do. And I know that you've worked with and helped many women in this transition too. You don't often hear about women struggling in that what's next after sport. It's always like men, and after they finish football or basketball or baseball, the big three, right? Sports, and not knowing what's next. Well, women, I mean, there's so many different facets of just life in general, starting a family, having kids, working, what type of work, but what if I still want to compete? What if I still, how does that look once I'm done with college? And I know that women have reached out to you, and I know that you've worked with women. And so it definitely warms my heart that you are a part of uh, keeping us uplifted, if you will.
Mm.
Um, our last question before we head out of here tonight, and I think this is another great segue. What are some steps that some former athletes can take who may be struggling, or maybe not, but some steps that some former athletes can take that they can begin to take to have a successful transition to life after sports? And that transition, let me just be clear on it. It doesn't have to be after college. It could be the transition in from your job life into what's next. One job to another, one job to entrepreneurship. But in that, once they are done, once they know, okay, I'm done with my sport, I'm done with this job, I'm done with, how can they thrive in what's next?
Yeah, such a great point you bring up too, just real quick about the transition is not necessarily just 22 and 23-year-olds coming out of college or athletes coming off their professional career. The transition is something that basically you're in transition from your sport until you find a new path that is fulfilling to you. Honestly, I've worked with, people in their mid, late 20s, worked with someone in the early 30s before who was coming off a overseas basketball career. So that's such a great point you bring up. But the first thing I would say is this. I would say number one, just remember you have to be proud of your accomplishments because I think it's so easy to get caught up in like, man, I had this fall from grace. I'm not doing anything with my life, and all that negative self talk doesn't do you any good. So the first thing is just to remember, like you played at an elite level, like you're part of a small group of people that made it to play at a certain level, and you should be proud of that and honor your career. And then that creates a level of like, okay, now I have this closure and I'm ready to move forward. And then from there, I always tell people like, you're still a role model. So the same people that were looking at you when you were competing, all your little siblings and nieces and nephews, and even people older than you, your parents, like people who look at you as like this, superhero for being able to compete at that level, they're looking at you to see what you're going to do next. So you set the example for the generations of athletes and not just athletes, but people coming up behind you. Like, just remember you're still a role model and take that responsibility seriously because you don't want to be the person who peaked at the top of your career and then the rest of your life was just a dud. Right? Like
Right,
you still want to
right.
go on to do great things. So remember that. And then the last component I'll share is that, you know, and I have to be careful with this because I know, back in the early days, I used to tell people just like do what you're passionate about. And it's like, some people want to be rappers. Like if nobody's buying your music or you're not, I'm not telling you to give up on your dreams, but there's a sweet spot where you have to figure out what you enjoy doing and what you're passionate about, but also what helps other people. Because if it helps other people, there's always going to be an opportunity for you to earn a living there, even if it takes a while. Like I was broke for the first couple of years when I quit my job and started doing this. But because I stayed consistent, kept serving, now I'm blessed to be able to actually earn a living off of doing the type of work that I enjoy and do it full time. So find something that you're passionate about, but also make sure it helps other people and there's actually a need for it. And then stay consistent. That's all I can say there.
I love it. I love it. Wise words, gems, gem droppers, if you will. I had a segment called Gem Droppers, and you know what? That's literally the outro of my interviews each night. Gem Droppers. That is a huge segment because it really shows that the people that I have coming on here, they know what they're talking about. They're experiencing it. And it's not just fluff. We're not just on here just talking, right? We are absolutely putting in the work daily to thrive in our own lives, to have fulfillment in our own lives, and even over that, to really change lives. So I am here for it. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our segment for night number 3 of the Women's Discipline and Mindset Summit. If you're here live, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat before we head out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the chat. Candace had to pop off, but she did say thank you so much, Taj. For people who are here live, and for people who are watching the replays when they become available, please let us know where we can find you. And if you have anything going on that you're offering currently, let us know so that we can reach out to you if we need you. And we're also going to put this information in the description area of the videos once they are available.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I say just look up Taj Deshawn or look up ThriveAfterSports. My full name is Taj Deshawn Johnson. I started going by Taj Deshawn because I wanted it to be where when you type that in, only I pop up. Mm-hmm. So TajDeshawn.com, that's the hub for everything I got going on, the books, the podcasts, all my social media. I'm most active on LinkedIn, just Taj Deshawn on there, Taj Deshawn on Instagram as well. I'm not hard to find. You know, if you reach out, I'll get back to you at least within a day or so. As far as offerings, I would say for anybody who is out there and knows like a current or a former athlete who needs some support, just have them reach out. Like I said, you don't have to get your credit card ready. I have systems in place to be able to work with them for free. Sometimes I'll do one call with someone and that's all they need. They don't even need to do like an intensive program. So just send people my way, or at the very least have them check out the podcast or get the book. The books are available on Amazon as well, but support your self-published authors out there and order directly from the website. It really does make a world of difference. And other than that, my last offering, I'd say that if anyone is thinking about writing a book, don't hesitate to reach out. I can support in that area as well. Give you some strategy so you're not just slapping a book on Amazon. We can still put the book on Amazon, but there's a lot that needs to happen beforehand. And also working on a lot of collaborative projects, not just athletes, not just like, athlete to entrepreneur with this collab, but we have, people in real estate, women in business, like any type of collaboration projects you can imagine, our company is facilitating those. So if you got the writing bug, you ever thought about being a published author, just reach out. We can find a project for you.
I love it. I love it. Shannon says, thank you for sharing your story and your gifts. I love the gems. Again, yes, we are greatly, greatly appreciative of Shannon says she will be reaching out. We're greatly appreciative of your presence, your expertise, your wisdom. We hope to continue to connect with you all, you all who are watching. Please make sure to go follow Taj Deshawn. If you're not starting anywhere, start at the podcast, Thrive After Sports. Just type it in, it'll pop up, and then go from there. You're sure to get a good word. You are sure to get a good word. We're going to close on out. I hope you all have an amazing night, and we will see you for day number 4 of the Women's Discipline and Mindset Summit. Thank you so, so much, and have a good night.
Thanks, Lashawn.
Absolutely. You're welcome.